I'm the Red Dog, the Air Force veteran intel specialist, the one you call on when you need to get the job done.
For those who don't know, please explain exactly why you are the Red Dog.
So it's funny because like all through elementary school, that's all kids just call me because my first name is Clifford, and Clifford Big Red Dog, and that's all I heard. And so what ended up happening was it went with me from elementary school to junior high, going into high school, and then from there went into college, and I just adopted it, really kind of took it on my own. And then when I joined the military, it was my call sign. So it never really left. It's gone with me from one area of life to another area of life and into where you see it now.
As someone who didn't start doing this until their 30s, have you seen any setbacks because of your late start?
I mean, it's funny because there's been a few. So moving around from place to place, moving from Hawaii to Georgia, well, to Massachusetts to Georgia to Maryland was definitely like the biggest things. And then just the military side of things, the pandemic, tearing my abdomen. I've had a lot of different kind of setbacks that kind of like really made me prevent from doing this. But to be real, I wouldn't change it for the world, because what ended up happening was I got a whole bunch of life, and I got to learn a bunch of lessons that brought on through the military that are similar to things that you would learn while you're in the wrestling world. And knowing those lessons and being able to adapt them from military to wrestling, and even just from family to wrestling, it's been a trip, so I wouldn't change it.
What has been your biggest mark-out moment so far in your career?
To be honest, it was sharing the same locker room with TJP. I had actually interviewed him on my podcast, Now Entering the Ring, part of the 3 Count podcast that you can find on YouTube. So interviewing him and then getting to share in the same locker room with him, like I was trying my best to stay calm and cool and collected, but inside I was just wanting just to mark out. But I have to remember that I'm also in a professional setting. Like I'm also a professional wrestler, so I have to keep that. But yeah, that was definitely like the top moment for me.
And how has COVID-19 affected your career?
Well, it stopped me from training for 2 months, so I was 8 weeks. And then when I finally got back into things, I had to be very careful. I had to be very selective about the dates that came up and actually worked in training wise, and then even just dates that I was trying to get put on the shows. So it got to be a lot, and it was that was the biggest thing, because it's not only just about me, but it's also about my daughter too, because she's also has a compromised immune system, and so she's not being access to certain medication. It kind of made it like harder for me to be like, all right, well, I need to go do this, and then always wear a mask, and then try not to wear a mask while you're in the ring, because that sucks, because you can't breathe really well while you're trying to run and hit the rope. So yeah, just it's a lot of different things.
You co-host and produce the 3 Count, a podcast where you talk about wrestling and also interview independent wrestlers. Who was your favorite wrestler to interview?
That's pretty tough, because I've had a lot of favorable moments with a lot of different wrestlers. I mean, just for one, we had Trayvon Jordan from Waves and Curls. Him and his partner Jalen Brandon actually debuted on AEW Dark a while ago. But Trayvon did a whole sermon as a pastor, and it was hilarious. It was like one of my favorite moments. We've had Ron Holiday on, where Ron just went off the rails talking about all the things that he talked about being sleazes. We've had Big Trouble Ben Bishop come through and talk about like his workout regime. We've had TJP talk about one of his favorite moments where he was outside the Staples Center and nobody wanted him to leave, so they wanted him to sign autographs. We've had Rob Noxious tell me about how he's taken a few shots to the head, he can't remember things. So there's like a lot of different wrestlers that have come on and talked to us. We've had Just Incredible come on, and Just Incredible told us about a time where him and Nash and Hall and X-Pac and Hogan were all smoking weed in the back of a limousine. So I mean, there's like lots of things, like different moments that have stuck out in my mind, but it's hard to like just pick one wrestler that was my favorite.
Who would you like to work by the end of the year?
My top name would actually be TJP.
From all of your matches, which one do you believe was your best and or your funniest?
I think funniest wise would have been my first match at SCWA with Ron Holiday. Just because I was so green and he was so determined to hit this back elbow off a springboard, and the rope just gave out and like he just hit the ground. But what made it best was like you heard this old lady in the background of the video, and she's like, "Oh, come on!" And so it gets me every time I hear it.
With the rise of deathmatch wrestling in popularity, what is your opinion on ultra-violence?
So I've gone back and forth with this question a lot, and just thinking about like how I feel. It's an art form. It's a really unique kind of art form. It's not for me. It's not my taste, but it is an art form. And watching people like Nick Gage and also Mason Martin go through and work, it's cool storytelling. But for me, like personally, I'm not a fan of like all the blood and stuff. But it is cool to watch those guys go and put in the work, and then you get to see people like Matt Cardona, who I would never thought would be into deathmatch, go into the deathmatch scene, or you see John Moxley, who's known for it, get back into it. You know, it's weird too because like as much as I'm not a fan of like the deathmatch scene, I'm a fan of Josh Barnett and watching his matches that he does. So it's very cool to see like those kind of matches, like this great open wrestling kind. But yeah, to me, deathmatch wrestling is just. It's not my flavor of tea, but I definitely can appreciate the art form.
How did you become a professional wrestler?
I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. And so what ended up happening was back in like 2003, I actually worked backyard at my friend's house in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, where I'm from. And then I ended up going into high school, college wrestling, then into military. And then once I got out, I was actually at the gym and I saw a friend of mine who was wearing a John Cena t-shirt. And we started talking about it. And then randomly I saw him at a grocery store and I asked him how he got into the scene. He kind of pointed me in one direction, so I went through the backyard scene for about 6 months. Randomly, another person that I know, Vam, found me and was just like, hey, we need to get you to the big times. And he just pulled me out and just came. Next thing you know, I show up to my trainer's place to sick in at Riot City compound, and there we go.
Do you believe professional wrestling is a dying art?
I don't think it's a dying art. I know a lot of people have been, I've heard that said a lot, but the thing about wrestling is that everybody wants to be like open into the world and talk more about like, hey, this is what we do, and you know we're gonna make people, we're gonna suspend belief. But as long as there's shows like The Bachelorette or The Bachelor or Bachelor Pad or The Challenge on MTV, if you guys watch that, or even if you guys are watching cartoons, or even if you're watching some sitcom show, like the belief is always going to be out there, and anybody that watches a Broadway play knows like you're gonna get what you're paying for. And I think the thing about wrestling is that we know that it's predetermined, but the thing about it is that it doesn't stop you from believing in magic, and as long as you can keep involving the next generation of children into it, yeah. You're going to get that wave, and then you're going to ride that momentum into the next generation. So I don't think it's a dying art. I just think that more people need to put time into it and show how it's been appreciated.
All right, Big Dog. Thank you for coming in and answering all my questions for you.
Yeah, no doubt. So if you guys want to find me, it's super simple, right? Twitter, IG, TikTok, and even I have another app called Clapper. It's all _RedDawg85. It's just literally _RedDawg85. You guys can find me on all your favorite social media platforms under that name. You guys can find me on PlayStation, even Activision if you guys run on Call of Duty and get that L. So you guys can also find me on a 3 Count podcast. Okay, so that's my big one. YouTube.com/the 3 Count podcast. You guys can check me out on Now Entering Ring. You guys can even find me on a platform called Nerds at a Round Table, where I get to talk about comics and music and movies and just all the stuff that's going on in the world of Hollywood. And if you guys can't remember all of that, just go to linktree.com/the_RedDawg85. Literally will give you everything I'm a part of right there.
And do you have any matches coming up?
Yeah, so August 7th, you're going to catch me with Sicken at SCWA as of right now. And then we'll see what the future holds as far as like getting more stuff loaded up in the schedule.